There are a million things that you can do with inherited money, but the very first and most important thing that you need to do is invest in yourself. So the first thing you have to do is really understand your investment goals and what you want to achieve. And there are just unlimited resources out there, books and videos and websites and everything else where you can get the information. Don't reinvent the wheel, just tap into what's already there. If you haven't invested in yourself, now is your chance to spend 10 seconds doing that right now. So start writing. First, how much money do you have to invest? Write it down. How many dollars? Okay. Second, when do you need money aside from daily living expenses? Like, when will you need a big chunk of money? Are you saving up for something like a car or a house? When will you need the money that you're investing in number one? So let's say you put $100. Are you going to need that $100 really soon? Or can you hold off from using that $100 for 5 months, 5 years, 50 years? 3, identify your risk tolerance. So what is your ability and willingness to take on risk from 1 to 10? What's your risk tolerance? And if you don't know exactly what this is, I was just watching a game show called Deal or No Deal. I don't know if you remember this. It was like with Howie Mandel, but it came on in the background of a waiting room where I was, and it was just stressing me out because these people were making these insane decisions. And so let me back up. The premise of the game is that Howie Mandel comes out with these 26 ladies and they all have briefcases. And inside the briefcases, it's like all these amounts of dollars from 1 penny to $1 million. And sometimes it was more than that. And so the contestant has to get up there and eliminate suitcases. If they choose to eliminate, let's say 1 penny, then you're more likely to win $1 million. But if you eliminate $1 million, then your odds are reduced. So let's play the following game, and this will tell you what your risk tolerance is. 3 choices. 1, you go home from the game show with $1,000 cash in hand. Sure thing, $1,000 bucks. 2, you keep opening up suitcases and eliminating and whatever, and you have a 50-50 chance of winning $50,000. But you know you could win more or lose more, but it's a 50-50 chance. 1 suitcase, you get 50,000, the other suitcase, you get 0. Okay, this isn't really how the game is played, but this is just to figure out your investor risk tolerance and risk profile. Okay, so the third option is you keep choosing suitcases and eliminating them, and you have a 3% chance of winning $1 million. Which one would you take? The sure thing, $1,000 bucks, go home, no matter what, no losing. Would you take a 50-50 chance to win 50K? Or would you risk it all and whittle it down to a 3% odds of winning $1 million? If you chose the riskier option, you probably have a slightly higher risk tolerance. And if you picked the sure thing, you probably want to invest in more stable investments. How much time are you going to spend investing? Are you going to be doing all the research yourself, or will you mostly be relying on other people to do the investments for you and manage your money for you? So once you have those 4 answers, how much money you have available when you need that money, your risk tolerance, and how much time you're willing to put into it, you have invested a little bit into yourself to really understand what the next steps are. While you're figuring this out, my first priority would be to put all of the money in a high yield savings account. And then it's sitting there earning interest while you're figuring out your game plan. Right now, you can find high yield accounts at all different kinds of banks, local banks, online banks, wherever. They all seem to be giving it out because the economy is where it is. Things have shifted. And so unlike 2 years ago, when you're desperate for like a 1% return, now you can get like 4% up to, nearing 5% return on your money. And so I just wanted to clarify something because I talked to a Gen Zer recently, and I realized that they're not teaching in schools what interest is and the difference between good interest and bad interest. So I'll just touch on that for a second. Earning interest in a high yield savings account is good interest. So for example, you have $100,000, you put it in the bank, they pay 4% interest rate. At the end of the year, you earn $4,000. So at the end of the year, you have $104,000 if you didn't spend anything. That's good interest. The bank pays you. On the other hand, let's say you open a Macy's credit card and you buy something there and the APR is like 25% or north of that. And so you end up spending $500 for making the minimum payments on a pair of shoes that originally had a price tag of $100. That's bad interest. That's you paying the bank. Just placing it into an account that earns interest while you're making your decisions on where to deploy your capital. It's better than just leaving it in your checking account or under your mattress or in your piggy bank or wherever else where it would just sit at zero. If your money sits at zero, not earning anything, then you are losing money because if you haven't noticed, it costs like $10 for a breakfast taco now when they used to cost 79 cents. Not only are prices inflated, tipping's inflated, costs are up, everything costs more, supply chain, blah, blah, blah. We've been hearing it nonstop. So you know that you cannot get today with $100 what you used to be able to get for $100. Now, we are so lucky to have these high yield accounts. We should definitely be taking advantage of them. A common investment asset class is stocks. I really discourage individual stock picking. I know this sounds crazy in today's day and age when people are like, getting high on GameStop and like stock trading, day trading when they've never had any kind of financial experience or anything like that. There's so much you have to keep up with in order to be an active stock investor. And the people who I know who are really successful in investing in stocks, they spend hours and hours each day reading up on the companies, watching the news, studying everything they need to study so that they are well educated on what's happening within a company, right? Because when you buy a stock, you're buying a share of a company that exists that has leadership and humans who work there and customers who buy their products and everything else. So you want to pay attention to everything that's going on in the news. How could you possibly do that for like a portfolio of 100 stocks or whatever, 50 stocks, 20 stocks is too much to keep up with. How many companies can you really keep up with? And unless you're spending that amount of time, which is truly a part-time job, like think about that. It's truly 15 to 20 hours a week plus that you want to spend educating yourself as to these companies. Are you reading the annual shareholder notices? Are you sending in your proxy card for voting? Are you opening up and reading through the prospectus, and you're reading the financials and you understand the debt to equity ratio and liquidity and cash flow and everything that's happening within that company, including the executives and who's moving and are they in the news and this and that. Like, do you really want to keep up with all of that? So unless you have some sort of special skill set around this financial area, you should probably just rely on the experts to do it. And the best way to do that is to invest in an index fund. I'm so sorry, I'm so boring, but yeah, you want to choose an index fund to invest in. So instead of relying on one company, you're relying on a group of companies which really are indicative of the market as a whole. Some of these companies and some of these funds earn dividends, and that's how you can earn money regularly, like cash flow, rather than this buy, sell, buy, sell. You don't want to have too much movement with your stock portfolio. Place your money there and leave it there over the long term. Continue to add to that. Try not to touch anything. Now, this wouldn't be a conversation with me unless we talked about real estate. So let's talk about the best asset class. Real estate is a time-tested way to earn money and build wealth over the long term. Whenever you hear about generational wealth and just the richest families in America and around the world, they very often have built that fortune in real estate and sometimes in the services around and related to real estate. Unlike individual stock picking where you have to keep track of a company, with real estate, let's say that you are going to buy the house next to yours and rent it out. Hey, you're the company, you're the CEO, you're the CFO, you're the one who's controlling everything. You know what you're going to do, right? So it's slightly more in your hands, which feels really good for an investment. It's not a quit your job and get rich quick kind of situation. It's more of a happening quietly in the background and building over time. There are tremendous tax benefits that come with investing in real estate. So not only are you earning, but you're saving. So instead of like with stocks, you earn, but then you pay in taxes. There are ways that you can invest in real estate where you earn and then you also save in taxes. And there's tax efficient ways you can set up your portfolio so that you can just continue to build. So then whatever you put in compounds more quickly. So depending on how much you wrote down initially on how much you have to invest, you can do all different kinds of things with real estate. I mean, let's say you wrote down $500, you can invest in fractional shares, like on these different websites that are available and these different apps that are available to do that. If you wrote down $500,000, you might be able to take down a building by yourself where you're buying and you're the landlord, you're the owner, or you're hiring out a property manager to be the landlord for you. And all you do is just collect a rent check every month. So it just depends on where your numbers fit in, what makes sense for you. But what I've seen for me is that real estate really works. The reason I know any of this is because I was practicing law at a company in downtown LA, and I spent most of my legal career there, and they made a strategic and very well-timed exit from the market. That means that after the legal department did all of the due diligence and wrapped up the company, there was no more company. So that means there's no more job and no more paycheck. And this is a company that had been around forever. There were people at that company who worked there for their careers, 40-year careers, 50-year careers. And so there was no inkling that any of this was going to come to an end. And this is something that my mom always taught me, was like, you can't rely on a paycheck because a paycheck comes from someone else. So I had no idea that it was going to go away, but thankfully I was prepared when it did. And in fact, I was so prepared that I have not worked another job since then. This means that I'm a full-time investor. So I spend hours and hours a day tending to my investments. So please learn from my mistakes. And remember, this is not get rich quick. It's really building wealth slowly and making sure it lasts and making sure it's building on itself so that your money earns money and it continues to grow. And that only happens over time. If you're smart with it, you don't spend it. And the very first thing that you should do as soon as this video turns off is open a high yield savings account and put all of that money in there while you're making your decision.